The time for change is now.
If you care about me when I do this,
Or when I do this, you should care about us when we do this. I won't always be an athlete, but I will forever be a Black woman.
you've had my back here.
Now, have my back here. No one should feel unsafe due to the color of their skin.
All lives can't matter until Black lives matter.
Join us in the fight to end systemic racism.
Black lives matter.
Black lives matter. Black lives matter.
Black lives matter.
I'm so excited that you've taken time out to tune in to the Ella Johnson Show. I hope that you enjoy the broadcast. I hope you'll laugh. I hope you'll cry. But I hope that you'll be moved by what you hear. Well, my guests are very special to me, and so are you. So I want you to sit back, enjoy the show. What you can become depends on what you can overcome. Yes, I'm so excited about my children's book that's coming out, and I'm looking for some mahogany kids. I'll tell you about that later. And now it's time for the Ella Johnson Show. Hello, everyone out there. It's Thursday night, and it's time for the Ella Johnson Show. Listen, if you are watching from Facebook, I want you to do me a favor. Just go ahead right now and click that share button. It's very simple. Don't you want everyone that's on your page to watch the show? Well, I do. So hit the share button for me if you're watching from YouTube. If you're watching from YouTube, I need you to just hit the subscribe button, because we want to have a lot of followers, and we want to make sure that you never, ever miss the show. Now, I want to thank you guys, all of you that are tuned in. Thank you if you have signed the petition. Thank you for just all the posts, everything that you share, your likes. We appreciate all of it, right, guys? Well, as you can see, I have two of my friends here with me tonight, and we are going to talk about last night. But because these guys are so special, they get to introduce themselves to you. So, Les and Anthony, which one of you want to go first? Tell everybody who you are.
Anthony.
I was going to say Les.
I know.
I'll take it on. Good evening, everyone. I'm Minister Anthony Clausell in Les. I actually grew up in the Clausell community. My ancestors and my family are from Monroeville, Alabama. I spent 23 years in information technology field, still in that field, but I'm also the pastor of technology and innovation at Gorham United Methodist Church here in Chicago. And I am also the founder and executive director of Anthony J. Classell Percussion Academy, which focuses in on teaching youth the art of drumline and drum and bugle corps.
Love it. Love it. Welcome again. Anthony has become a regular on the show, but always I look forward to having
No
you.
introduction is needed.
Oh, yes. Well, Mr. Les.
Okay, well, I'm Les Prouty, as you can see. I guess my name shows up there. I'm from Monroeville, grew up there, born and reared, and lived there until 1984. And when I was 27, worked in the logging timber business with my dad for a number of years before leaving to go to seminary in 1984. And I've been in, mostly since 1984, I've been in some kind of ministry position, pastoring or in mission work. Spent a few years in a business setting. And by the way, I ended up in St. Louis County, in 1988. So I've been here like 33 years, believe it or not. And so I've been gone longer than I've been there. But my mom just passed away last year in Monroeville. So I've been down there a lot over the years to visit with her. And then my dad, of course, before he passed away in 2007. And so for the last 11 years, I've been involved with a ministry in Haiti, going to Haiti about 50 something times, doing work with families down there to help them get kind of a leg up and keep their families together, basically, and out of orphanages. And then I'm currently also a chaplain. I'm a corporate chaplain, so I'm a chaplain in the marketplace. I go into businesses and who bring us on, and I'm a chaplain to the employees of those companies here in the greater St. Louis area. That's what I do. I've got 5 children that are grown and 7 plus grandchildren. 1 is on the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I love it. Listen, guys, I feel honored to be around these ministers. So, with all these ministers on the show, I can't cut up. I can't cut up. But if I'm close to them, I might be a little bit closer to God. No, I'm just kidding, guys. Thank you both. And welcome to the Ella Johnson Show again. Listen, guys, tonight, if you're just tuning in, I don't know if you watched the last night's broadcast. If you missed it, you have to go back and check it out. Because we're going to talk about it tonight. Last night on the Ella Johnson Show, we were honored to have Pete Earley, who is the author of Circumstantial Evidence. Now, you know that there were 2 books that were written about Johnny D and Ronda Morrison. That case, everyone knows about that from Monroeville. And he's one of those books, Circumstantial Evidence. The other one was Just Mercy, which, of course, the movie just came out. So you guys, how did you enjoy last night? Was that incredible or what?
I'll go first. Yeah, I tuned in a little bit late, but I got most of the show, and I was just incredibly impressed with the interview. I read Pete Earley's book, Circumstantial Evidence, back when it came out. I think in 1996 is when it came out, and I really couldn't put it down. One of the reasons was it was speaking to an issue that, in a case that I knew something about. I knew Rhonda, I knew her family, and also I knew almost everybody in the book that was named. So he's going through and describing, and then I think to have him come back 25 years later and talk about give his perspective 25 years later was really impressive, and I hope my hope is it leads to something more to solve the case.
I definitely think so, Anthony. And I think that what we did last night is we proved that we can have an adult conversation about a topic that is so sensitive. And the reason it's sensitive is because the murder is not solved. There were 2 families devastated by this event. I mean, let's just start with Rhonda. 18 years old. She was a junior. She was a freshman at the junior college in Monroeville. Beautiful young lady. She's been described, and you can vouch for this, Les, as a outgoing, always smiley young lady. Her life was just beginning, and it was snuffed out of her. by we don't know who. And that's what the petition is all about. Now, I know you guys have been watching my page and you hear me talk about the petition, the petition, the petition. Well, let me tell you what the petition is for. The petition is because Ronda's murder case has not been solved. And we need to do that now. It's time. So the petition is so that the Attorney General and all of his whomever he has to go to will take heart with this issue and reopen this investigation, because this is something that needs to be done. And last night, Les, I think Pete Earley said it best when he said, not only does he think it can be solved, but he thinks it should be solved. That was powerful when he said that. And I want to appeal to everybody that's watching this broadcast. If you have not watched the broadcast, you have to check it out. If you've not read the book, you have to check it out. Did you learn anything new, Les?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think from listening to Pete Earley, there were a couple of people that I was not quite as familiar with, and he talked about, like I said, I knew almost everybody in the book. What I was impressed with from his perspective is how he talked about, his interviews with several notable people in the book. And he was face to face. He was down there in the fight, as I guess he's considered a journalist. I don't know. He's certainly a.
We've had a lot of experience as a journalist. Yes.
Yeah.
14
he's a
years actually.
Renowned author and award-winning author. And for him to come to Monroe and sit down with some of the people that were key in the case, just to hear him, I guess what I was really most impressed with is that he came back so much, all these years later and said, this not only should be solved, it can be solved.
I know that was interesting to hear, Anthony, because you know how everybody wants to say, oh, it's so old. Are you kidding me? They just had another case. I think it's like 30 years old. And it was Christina Smart. Did you guys hear about that? Yeah. That was a cold case. And guess how they found the person to charge? On a podcast.
Yeah.
Doing what we're doing here. So it can work. It will work. I really believe that the people that are watching this broadcast, that we're going to take our community back and we're going to bring this back together the way it was meant to be. We were meant to be one community, no racial divide. And I think it's time for us to stand up and listen. I know this is something that you may have to think about. You may even have to pray about. This is the place. If you need Jesus, this is the place to find him. He's on the Ella Johnson show tonight because these guys you guys are supposed to smile. Hello. I know y'all are not Jesus.
Ella,
Anthony got a little late.
Ella, I'd like to say that I think I made this in the comments last night. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I every day when I exercise or run or walk or whatever I'm doing, I listen to podcasts. I take my iPhone and I listen to podcasts, and almost totally what I listen to is true crime podcasts, solved cases, unsolved cases. One of my favorite podcasts is called Crime Junkies. I think I messaged you about that.
Yes.
And Crime Junkies is a national and even international podcast. These two young ladies who do it. And I don't know if it was on their show, a different one, but just a couple of days ago, I heard a complete, podcast about a case from a murder in 1970 that was solved in 2016. Now you count that's 46 years.
Absolutely.
Now, that can happen. I know it can happen. I've heard it many times, 20, 25, 30, 35 years. And in this case, 46 years. And so it can be done. And when that's done, not only will Ronda be vindicated, there will be justice served, and her mom, bless her heart, Bertha, but also the lingering doubts about Walter McMillan, Johnny D, that people have that think that he was, just let off for whatever reason. And there's still people that think that. And I don't know.
And I didn't know that. I mean, I had a feeling, but he he made sure that we understood that last night, because he said that people from Monroeville still reach out to him, Anthony, and he said, "Oh, I'm just going to be straight 100 with you. There are people who still think he did it." So that is why this petition is so important, because even though it has been proven in a court of law that he did not do this, ABI came to Monroeville and investigated, and they proved that he did not do it. It still isn't enough. So maybe finally, when we catch the killer, then we'll be able to say it is finished, because now we can heal. Everybody knows Johnny didn't do it. Here's our guy. So if you know some information, listen, I was on the phone today with SBI. I think they're SBI now, not ABI. I think it's State Bureau of Investigations now. And I was on the phone with them. So we're getting the ball rolling, because we're not playing about this. This is something that is very near and dear to all of us. And it should be to you too. So if you have some information, don't hold on to it. Don't tell me. But once I get the investigator, we're hoping they'll reopen the investigation. But Les, it would be great if we could just call SBI up and they say, "Oh, don't worry about that. We got you." But however we have to do it, we'll do it. We're not quitting. That's my point. So Anthony, you're being quiet tonight. Tell me, what did you think about the book and what you've read so far?
So the book is most definitely a different spiel from having read Brian Stevenson's Just Mercy, right? With Just Mercy, you're kind of focusing in on all of the great work that he's doing with the Equal Opportunity Initiative and getting African American folk, off of death row. But when we kind of look at Circumstantial Evidence, it kind of really goes right to the heart and the meat of trying to put forth efforts to have information about solving the case, right? Both books are a necessary read, but they're two different spills, right? So when you kind of look at the racial injustice, the oppression from the Monroe County law enforcement and government, that really is gleaned in the Just Mercy book, right? But with Pete Earley, you're kind of looking at, as the title is, circumstantial evidence about putting forth information in the active kid. Now, to your point about signing the petition, I think that it is evident that everyone should sign the petition because, one, regardless of whether, Johnny D is exonerated or regardless of whether any of the older law enforcement folk from Monroeville that were involved, are some kind of way punished for their actions, you still have a grieving mother. So it doesn't matter if this happened in 1950, 1960, 1970, whatever the case may be, you have a mother who lost her child and does not know who actually took the life of my child. So from a empathetic perspective, if you put yourself in her position, you would want to know, who took the life of my child for no reason at all. Like, my child would have been, at this point, maybe, close to being in her 50s, but she's actually not here because someone took her life. And the person who took her life is potentially still walking on this earth, not having justice served. So that's really the crust of the petition. And also, too, it does for folk in the Monroe County area who still perceive, after all the evidence that was actually presented, even if you did not read the evidence, even if you did not read the book Just Mercy, even if you just saw the movie, right, and you're taking it from a quote-unquote fictional perspective, Johnny D did not commit that murder. So for people who still believe that he did that, this, by catching the killer, by signing a petition, exonerates all of that. And my hope is that the law enforcement that was actually involved during that time really gets, their head slapped for really throwing a man on death row because of the color of his skin, right? We are so tired of that, right? It is actually old at this point. We're all made in the image of God. My skin color does not dominate your skin color and vice versa. So that's also one of the other reasons for signing the petition, in hopes that we could bring those folks that were involved with this plot and bringing them to justice, if at all possible. But The main piece is Ronda Morrison's mother needs closure.
Yes. And I know I have a lot of women watching this, and a lot of you are mothers. And even if let's say you've signed the petition and you feel like that's enough, it's not. We need you to share it. We need you to speak on this from where we're coming from. Don't put a spin on it to make it more than it is. What it is that it wasn't solved, and it should be, because it is going to be the very thing that's going to give, Bertha Morrison the peace that she needs. And it's going to give Johnny D's family the peace that they need, So, but, I want to get into some of the meat and potatoes of the book, because we covered a lot last night, but not listen, you should have seen my notes. I had like 16 pages of notes. I don't know where in the world I thought I was going to keep the man all night. I was like, because there's just so much. There's so much to talk about. And I think that some of the things that I learned, I don't know about you, Les, or you, Anthony, but listening to him, some of the things that I learned that I didn't know was, number one, that he actually knew that people still believe Johnny D did it. And the fact about the book cover. Did you remember what he said about the book cover? That he had to do the book cover that way because they didn't want to see real pictures. His publisher didn't think that having real pictures would sell. And he said a couple other things that, I was just like, what? When he said that the publisher didn't think that Black people read. But we're not going to go there tonight. That's another show. But it was good to get to know him. But I want to talk about some things, guys, because there was just so much stuff in the book that we gotta talk about it. And the reason I want to do that is because I know I have some viewers that are watching tonight that may not have tuned in last night. And you guys may be hearing about this for the first time. So if you are just tuning in, we're talking about the book Circumstantial Evidence, Death, Life, and Justice in the Southern Town. That Southern Town is Monroeville, Alabama. And all of us here are from Monroeville. Now, did you guys realize in the first trial, this is something that I wanted to bring up that I think is key. In the first trial, he even agreed, Pete even agreed that the lawyers kind of bungled it up a little bit. And from what I read, I tend to agree. And I think they didn't get a fair shot because, as you guys know, they withheld, the Monroeville Police Department withheld a lot of information, Anthony and Les. Mm-hmm. We agree on that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So how can you have a fair trial? How can you even take him? And this is why I really need everybody to just stop for a minute. Forget about the color of his skin. Forget about what you've heard. Forget about the fact that he was in a relationship with a white woman. Let's forget that. Let's take all of that off the table, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What we have to get to is the middle of this onion, because all the other stuff happened as a result. But in the middle of the onion, you have a Black man who was targeted. Do we agree? Correct. He was targeted.
Yeah, I think if I'm right, Ella, that name escaping me right now, and I don't have the book in front of me, but the man who was in prison already for the Bruton murder, or was up for that,
Ralph Myers.
Ralph Myers.
Yeah.
So Ralph had some connection with Johnny D or Walter McMillan. If my memory serves me right, and he gave up Walter McMillan to help himself,
right?
And so what flowed from that was a cascade of ignoring exculpatory evidence, ignoring witnesses,
right?
And really not. And finally, ignoring what Ralph Myers had said, which was uncovered on a cassette tape, I believe, later, that was uncovered, where he said, they're telling me what to say, they're coercing me, they're telling me what. And so he recanted. Now I know that recantations are, especially by current prisoners, are often looked at, probably justifiably so, looked at, like, I don't know about that. Because they're trying to help themselves get out of their own predicament or get their sentence shortened or whatever. But the fact that so much was ignored, that and not and withheld from the
Yeah,
defense.
withheld is closer to what's real. It was withheld.
Not just ignored, but withheld from the defense.
Right.
That
right.
ended up implicating or led to Walter McMillan's conviction. And so here's the thing. Not only was, in my opinion, not only was Walter McMillan wrongly convicted, and he was an easy target.
Why was he an easy target? Why do you think that?
Well, because of
he didn't have a criminal record.
No, I don't think he had. He has some minor skirmishes, but nothing major, right? But he had this connection with Ralph Myers, who was implicated, right? Yeah. Kind of more of a bad guy, right?
Yeah.
And Walter McMillan had this relationship with a white female
who was married, and he was married. That didn't look good.
So 1986. I had just left there about 2 years prior to that, and I was in seminary. But I knew Ronda and her family, that we were in church together. We grew up in. I came into that church in 1982, so I knew Ronda and her family a little before that, but more so during that 2 or 3 years before I left the seminary. But in 1986, I was living there, and I don't know when you left, Anthony, but I'll tell you that I think that Monroeville race relations were maybe beginning to change some by some people. This is going to sound so like, enough. Some people, okay. I think by the year 2000, 2005, things improved a lot. But in 1980s, I think there was still this divide. I grew up in Monroeville where, I didn't know any African Americans living anywhere near me. They lived in one area where you said you grew up, Anthony. Down, right? I went to school where there were no African Americans at Monroe Academy. And I've talked to you, LA, about this, and I can't believe that was happening, but it did. And so there was still this divide. And so you come along in 1986, you're not really that far removed from To Kill a Mockingbird in 1962 or 3, whatever year that was. In fact, Pete Earley used To Kill a Mockingbird to sort of frame his whole book, right? About the black man who was accused of assaulting a white woman and went to trial and so forth and so on, and was convicted.
The difference is that Johnny D didn't have an Atticus Finch, though. That's the difference.
No, he didn't.
But, he did. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But here's my point. I think the reason he was an easy target is because he had a little bit of association with a bad guy. He was an African American, with a white woman. That no, not 19.
But did you see what Tammy just said? She said that Johnny D and Ralph Myers didn't know each other. Karen was the connection.
Okay.
Because think about it. On the tape, he said, "I don't know him." Remember, he says, "Y'all want me to frame this man, and I don't know him."
Well, yeah,
that's what the tape said.
He connected through her. Yeah,
through her. Right. Yeah. And I think I remember him saying last night that she was the first one that turned on him. She was the first one that said he did it.
Yeah.
Between her and Ralph.
I think everybody was looking out for themselves. I mean, Ralph Myers, Karen was looking out for herself. Yeah. The reason I'm saying he was an easy target was because of the scenario I just described about race in mid-1980s. I don't think that is as true now as it was then. If you go down there and look around and drive around, and I know in my own family connections, African Americans in my own family. So,
right.
But my point is, I think he was an easy mark, and then it was easy to. Then what happens? I listen to a lot of these crime podcasts, so I'm a crime junkie. So what happens is once they zero in on somebody that looks easy, it puts blinders on, and they're not looking at anybody else. And heck, as Pete Earley said,
they were looking at other people. No, that they were looking at other people.
Yeah,
Miles Jackson.
They didn't do anything with them.
They didn't do anything with them. But what I'm saying is they made a decision to stick with Johnny D because they didn't want the Caucasians that they were interviewing. Miles
Well,
Jackson,
yeah.
the owner
So,
of the cleaners, he
right.
lied about not having been in the cleaners for 2 weeks. He lied about that. He flat out lied about that. You know, they didn't catch Johnny D in any lies, but they caught this guy in lies. Oh, well, I forgot to tell you. You know, they gave him a polygraph and all this kind of stuff, but they zeroed in because they wanted it to be him. So they made it him. So they didn't use anything that could have proven his innocence. They left all of that out. The fish fry. Come on, two police officers were there. They kept that out of it.
Yeah.
Things that could have helped him. So it's like it's when I hearing this story, I'm just going to be 100 with you, Les and Anthony. It doesn't take the anger away from me. It's like my heart is dealing with a lot of emotion because it does still make me angry. And it still makes me angry because it's not solved. It's not solved because this thing hurt too many people and it didn't have to. This woman has lived her whole life without her child. I can't imagine what that was like. So my anger has a lot to do with her hurt because I don't want this woman to leave this world and not know who killed her child. That is a priority for me, and I don't have to explain why. And I'm not going to because I'm a mother. And it should bother every single person watching this broadcast. If you have a soul, this should be like, you know what? Where do I sign? That should be the only thing you say at the end of this broadcast. Where do I sign and what can I do to help? Well, you can start by, donating like maybe $3,000 or $4,000 so we can have some reward money. Maybe we'll get some answers there. And I'm just saying, that's just the first thing that comes to mind, Anthony. I mean, think about it. They raised $18,000 and they gave it to people like Bill Hooks. We wouldn't do that, So, but there's a lot of things to uncover because there were other people that they looked at. Now, this Howard Denmar person, that seemed to be on a hot topic last night. I'm just going to be 100, guys. I've had so many people tell me who they think killed Ronda Morrison. Now, I would never mention that on this broadcast. And that bothers me that so many people know and he's not arrested. So, Anthony, why do you think it is that so many people seem to think they know who killed her and nobody's talking? Why is that?
I think it's kind of for the same reasons that Johnny D was actually a target. Is some hush hush that's going on still within this small niche of folk that, okay, well, yeah, we know who the killer is, but that's over 30 years, so we're just gonna let it slide. There's no reason to open up the case again. Hey, Johnny D is deceased now, so we're just gonna kind of hang tight right there from that perspective. I just really think it has to do with how people took positions of power to basically, an ungodly and evil state, right? Using evil to keep things being, from, in an oppressive state. So to your point, if there are people who know who did it or have an indication who did it, why can't they go to the appropriate law enforcement agency or go through the channels, whatever that may be, and say, hey, I have an inclination of X, Y, and Z because of X, Y, and Z, right? Same scenario that was actually done with Johnny D. Oh, he may have been associated with Ralph Myers. He was in a relationship with, Karen Kelly. That was an easy stop on the flip side of that. So why can't we now be on the right side of justice and come to the table if there is information about the killer who is still at large?
Why do you think, Les? Why do you think these people that know something won't talk?
I think there's an attitude of letting sleeping dogs lie, as the old saying goes.
But they didn't let him lie when it was Johnny D, though. When they thought it was Johnny D.
No, they didn't. They thought. I think there are people who sincerely thought they had their man. I think there were other people who.
I don't know how though. The evidence was so flimsy.
I agree, and looking back at it now, but I'm saying at the time,
Yeah.
people were believing what they were being told. And I think there, like Pete Earley said last night, there are still people who still believe he did it, and that the system just got him off. This high powered lawyer from Montgomery, originally from Delaware, and he came in and city slicker guy and got him off. So I think there's just let it be. We don't need to stir this up, and Monroeville doesn't need the bad publicity kind of thing. But I also think there's a protection of people who would be, I don't know if they'd be criminally implicated. I'm not saying that. I don't know about that. I'm not an attorney or anything like that. But they would certainly have their reputations implicated were the actual killer brought out, and it really came out now in 2021 what happened and what led to a wrongful conviction and an ignorance and ignoring of this other person. Why did that happen? Why? Suppose that one of the people that was in Pete Earley's book, suppose one of those people was actually the killer. I don't know. I'm not accusing anybody. I'm not naming names. But suppose they were. And suppose that person had been looked at and interviewed and talked to and so forth right before their eyes. And they didn't go there. They went over here. How does that look? That looks like some people today are like, just leave it. We don't need that.
But
let me just say for the record, if you are out there and you know something and you're not talking and you're just worried about your image or the image of Monroeville, shame on you. Because I do not care about that. I'm just going to put that one out there. I don't care. And if we find you, then you're going down. Simple.
And
if you know something, say something.
To the point.
That's what I was trying to say.
Why does that actually even matter when you have a grieving mother? As a matter of fact, just as in December 2020, there was an article that was just recently published. Again, I believe it was the Monroe Journal, about how a grieving mother is still wanting answers, is still looking for the killer. So the fact that, people won't talk, or there is some sort of cover up in place, you have a grieving mother. And I think what we have to do as people is we have to really put ourselves in that position, right? There are a lot of people who are walking around who are not empathetic, right? We need to be more empathetic when it comes to the lives and well-being of other people, right? For example, we have all of the senseless killings of Black and brown kids that are happening at the hands of the police. So while that may right now at this point not be anyone in our family, we should be empathetic and the cause and do something that's going to help stop this madness, right? Same thing in this case here. What we can do as a community, as a small county, is get behind this petition, because Ronda's mother deserves, number one, answers, but also two, the killer, if in fact the killer is still walking the earth, needs to be brought to justice. Is never too old to actually go to jail. Never too
I don't
old.
care if we have to take him on a wheelchair or a stretcher. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, I'm not trying to be, I'm just being real, because you know what? I don't know what it's like to lose a child. So it is very difficult for me to say, I know how she feels, because I don't. I have never lost a child. And I can imagine what it's like. But Anthony, this was over 35, almost 35 years ago when this happened. And the fact that we're still talking about trying to convince people to do the right thing, isn't that a problem?
Yes, that is a society problem, right?
We should have gotten past the color of the skin here, because let's just be real. When Johnny D had to go through what he had to go through, we don't talk a lot about what he went through when he was on death row. But some of the things that I did learn is that his cell was very close to where they electrocuted everybody. He was very close to that. Yellow Mama is the name of the electric chair. And he was close to that. That tortured him. So he heard everybody when they got killed. And just sitting there wondering, am I next? Am I next? And then going to court. And then every time you go to court, oh, sorry, we're not releasing you. Sorry. Just being, time and time again, disappointed. And he's sitting there thinking, I tell my kids to do the right thing all the time, and look at me. And for the record, for anybody that says, well, he shouldn't have been messing around with that white woman. Listen, let me just talk to you about that. We've all done things that we're not proud of. Right, Anthony? We've all been there. But I will say this, based on the book, he was ending that. He was ending that relationship. He was telling her he didn't want anything to do with her. He was trying to go back to his wife. He really was. I mean, I'm not going to try to, I'm not going to judge him, because we've all done stuff, and I'm definitely not going to throw stones. But if you're going to talk about it, at least know the whole story behind it. Right, Anthony? Well, also, all right. Looks like Les is back. Okay, go ahead with that.
If you're going to talk about that as well, you have to open up and talk about, white men sleeping with black women during that era as well. This was just a case in which, hey, it happened to be that he was the target because of his dealing with a white woman. But there was the other side as well, right? We cannot have one without the other. We cannot.
Let's talk about some other characters, the family and friends that were there that day. How is it that didn't matter, Les? I'm going to let you answer that since you were gone away.
Sorry, I had to run off for a minute, but
it's okay.
I have no idea. Again, I'm a amateur sleuth listening to these crime podcasts, but
you might end up solving it if you keep listening to those podcasts.
But I just don't. I can't wrap my brain around. Was it 20-something witnesses?
I think it was 12 that were.
Okay, so
one after the next,
or whatever. But multiple witnesses that placed Johnny D. or Walter McMillan out 5 or 6, 7 miles out of town that morning. The fact I can't wrap my brain around that, how that was ignored and just cast aside. And then the fact that he didn't get his the lowrider truck didn't happen until 6 or 8 months later. That was supposedly the lowrider truck that came by the cleaners. How did that get by? If somebody was just like, never mind, we got our guy.
Well, let's talk about how it got by. It was your police department.
Yep.
The people that are put in place to do the right thing. This is why we should hold them accountable. Now, 2 of those men are dead because they're not here for us to talk about them.
Yeah.
Because if they were, we would be talking about them still. So you have Eichner, you have Benson, and you have Tate. Benson was with ABI. They had all the information and they sifted through it and used some things. Now we're not going to use that. Benson had an audio tape recording of a man in Bruton that told him, I can't remember his name, but he told him, I think it was Daily something. But anyway, I can't remember the name. There's so many characters in the book. But it told him that Ralph Myers was going to say that Johnny D did it. It was on tape, Les and Anthony. Benson had this. Benson is also the person who I think Patterson, the guy that ended up going down for the Bruton thing, they knew he didn't do it. Benson had that information because what happened is they did they checked out his alibi and it checked out. And Benson says, well, I'm going to withhold that information. And he withheld the information, guys, and the man went down. He was in jail, I think, like 5 months or whatever, but he got out for it. But it was so many things in this that was just ugly.
How was Benson not held accountable for that?
The same reason none of them were held accountable. None of them were held accountable.
Benson was ABI, right, at the time?
Yeah.
I mean, is
he was.
Still with ABI? Is he still out there?
No, he's not, because he's dead now.
Oh, he's dead.
God bless the dead. Yeah, he's passed away last year. Yeah.
Okay.
But you're right. None of them have been held accountable. But I tell you who is still alive. Tate is. He's the only one left. So We'll get him.
Well, I don't know. Ted Pearson, isn't he? Is he still alive?
Is Ted Pearson? Oh, I didn't forgot about him.
Ted Pearson was the DA at the time.
Yeah.
Chapman, DA, later Chapman, I believe he's passed away a few years ago.
Yeah, Chapman is. Eichner's dead. Let me ask you guys this. Did you catch this in the book where in the trial, and I need you guys, this is the thing that just irks me. In the trial, when Pearson was giving his closing arguments, he, was talking to the jury and he looked back at Johnny D, and you know the word he used? Animals. Called the man an animal. And he wasn't even guilty. At the trial, Johnny D, when they said, look, you have any last words you want to say, anything you want to say? And he said to the Morrisons, ma'am, I did not kill your daughter. Being as sincere as he could be. And in the book, this is another thing that was disturbing to me. We, African Americans, are so quick, and you guys are both ministers, so I'm going to throw this question at you, Les and Anthony. You guys don't have to answer it, but in the book, the Morrisons went to their pastor, Eastwood. Is it at the same church you went to, Les? They went to their pastor, and they wanted to know sincerely what they're supposed to feel, how they're supposed to just kind of handle this and separate their feelings so they're on the right track with God. We all want to be. I will go to my pastor too. And do you know what he said to them? Do either one of you guys know about that part?
Remember?
I'll tell you. Okay. What happened was he said, God wants you to forgive Johnny D, but he also wants justice. So he also wants him to be executed. The pastor said that. Now, I need to know what you guys feel about that. Talk to me.
I'll let you go first, Anthony.
I knew it.
He's so generous, right? I love Les for that.
One, I think his commentary was based upon circumstantial evidence.
Oh, how catchy is that? You're so smooth. I tell you.
Yep. The commentary was based upon circumstantial evidence, circumstantial information. Now, taking out the context of what we're talking about as it relates to Johnny D and the perceived notion at that time that he did kill her, yes, God wants you to forgive a person. And, God is also a God of justice for the oppressed and for people who actually have been wrong. Now, his commentary, again, was based upon circumstantial information, circumstantial evidence. I will kind of leave it there and put that in the parking lot because, we here have the, we have the perceived facts and all of the readings from the book on this side 30 years later, whereas during that time, that information was not prevalent, right? You have a lot of mixture of information. You have mixture of emotions. I will also say you have a mixture of racism in there as well. So it's really kind of hard to say why potentially the pastor would make that comment.
I mean, especially if he's not here to defend himself. So I want to acknowledge that, right?
Correct. So that's why I'm just putting in the context that his commentary in a pastoral care setting was based upon circumstantial information and circumstantial evidence that was provided during that time at the height of this case. Okay,
I want to hear what you have to say, Les, because
I think, Anthony, you just said some really good things, and I think that the context at the time was a conviction that had just happened. It's what we're talking about, right?
But God is the same. God didn't change. We didn't rewrite the Bible.
No. But then you get into the admonition from him, and I think I know who that minister was. I think I was there when he was still there. The admonition to forgive is a good one.
That is, yes.
Nothing wrong with that. Now, then the statement about he should suffer the death penalty because of the conviction, again, like Anthony said, he was operating on what was known at the time, which was you had a conviction. Now, then you can debate whether or not you agree with the death penalty or not. There's the thing. So apparently he did. There are some ministers who do and some ministers who don't. There are some people who agree with the death penalty, some who don't. But based on apparently what he thought at the time was, Mr. and Ms. Morrison, your daughter was murdered brutally, and this man has been convicted, and he deserves to die at the hand of the state. In that context, now, yeah, like Anthony said, we've got the benefit of 35 years later, and Johnny D's conviction was overturned, and he was, I think, exonerated. It was overturned and set aside, and many more years since then. So we can look at that and say, well, gosh, if his wish had been carried out, an innocent man would have been executed. That's true if it had happened quickly. If it had happened, quickly. That's why death penalty executions don't happen quickly. That's one good thing about appeals and some time. You don't, like the old West, just hang somebody, get convicted and go out and hang them out in, 10 minutes later. So I give him the benefit of the doubt, like Anthony did. He was at the point of trying to comfort a family and give them some encouragement to forgive, which would always be good advice.
That's not the part I'm talking about, though. I'm talking about how they were so quick, because we have to remember Johnny D was sent to death row. So they already named him guilty from the beginning.
I know. Okay? He stayed on death row before he was convicted. I understand that.
Yeah, before a trial even.
And that, listen, in my view, that's wrong.
That was wrong. Yeah.
To me, that prejudices the entire rest of the case. You've already got a man sitting on death row who you hadn't even convicted yet.
And then you have the Monroe Journal saying that he's guilty without even knowing anything about what's going on, because they have Tom Tate telling them and feeding them lies. So let's just go there, because you have Monroe Journal, who is supposed to be a beacon of journalistic fortitude, and they're out here lying and telling one side, and that has a lot to do with why people think the way they do. Someone has to be the bigger person and say, you know what, we got this wrong. I need a pastor in Monroe to get on the pulpit and say, listen, it is time for this community to heal, black and white. This man did not do this. I know that we went through a season where everything was horrible and there was a racial divide, but it's time for us to come together. He didn't do it. The evidence pointed that he didn't do it. Now, I know that we may have our pride in the way, but there's no room for that.
I'm saying the pastor at the time, he didn't have the benefit of that. It's like today in 2021, if someone is convicted of a crime and, everything looks like from what perceptions are, it looks like he's guilty, then, okay, we go with that because that's what we're being told.
Right,
now,
right.
So everybody at the time was not privy to what Pete Earley exposed in his book almost 10 years later.
But now they are, and they still.
Now they are, but then that's why I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt to say, if you were a death penalty proponent and you had somebody in your church who just had a victim, a family member murdered, and now the guy's convicted, and you're going to say that's what he deserves. Now, hindsight, even 10 years later, but certainly 35 years later, is going to say, well, that wouldn't have been good. Right. But now we know. Look, there are people on trial right now in the national spotlight, or soon to be on trial for some very high-profile cases. And one of the things we always have to remember in the justice system in the United States is a person is innocent until proven guilty. And so we have, everybody deserves their day in court. Johnny D deserved his day in court. He got his day in court, but it was slanted. We now know, but we didn't know that then. And so we have to remember that we only can operate on what we're being told and what we can see. We're not in the courtroom. We weren't in the courtroom. I wasn't there. And I only know what I know because of what happened later, the court proceedings and then the books that have come out since then.
And Ellie, you and I have had this conversation before the sidebar, right? My belief and, my theology is that, God is the author of life and death, right? God is the only one that can bring you into the world, and God is the only one that can actually take you out of the world. So, to Les's point, right, it all would depend upon what his perceived notion and how he felt about the death penalty. But also, I do have to allude, I don't know the pastor or anything of that nature, and honestly don't even remember the church, but I do have to allude to the fact that during that time, because this case does have racism contained within it, right? That's obviously a premise of the case, that those comments could have been, from a pastoral care perspective, could have some racist connotation. And I'm not saying that they did, because neither one of us was actually there.
Right.
But,
Right.
Based upon the era, based upon what we are actually dealing with, the facts that were actually given, and also the facts that were not given, from a press perspective, all of the evidence that was actually covered up, his pastoral moment with that family probably tie all that together. And again, within his beliefs, his theology, and how he felt that things actually should have been handled.
Well, I think that's part of the problem. I think everybody's talking out of the side of their neck and not focusing on where you should be. I don't care about your personal feelings. You have you have the job, and you're obligated to tell people the truth. You don't get to pick what you want out of the Bible and say, I like this part, but I don't like this part. You don't get to do that. And you don't get to use that platform to do that. So we're going to move from that one. But that one was a very touchy thing for me, because you have over here, everybody saying forgive. We all agree with that. I think he was right on that. And I hope she was able to forgive. But he wasn't the one that needed your forgiving. It's the real killer that needed your forgiving. Now, we're so quick to hide him and forgive him. We'll let him just live the rest of his life out, Ella. The man's probably going to die soon anyway. No. Why can't you use that same mindset for the man who may or may not be Caucasian? Why can't we have that same, well, let him fry attitude? So we're going to move from that one. Because
can I just say?
Absolutely.
I'm a Christian minister. I have been since 1987. I was ordained. I am a proponent of the death penalty. So I'll get that out there. I understand that it's not a perfect system, and that's nothing is in a fallen world. However, I understand that, and I'm fine with a longer period of time of appeals and that kind of thing. That's what saved Walter McMillan's life, Johnny D's life, from being executed quickly or something like that. I will say I don't really care what the color of the skin is of the killer who murdered Ronda. If he is found, I'll say, or she,
right?
But if that person is discovered and convicted, and they're not African American, I'm still gonna be great and fine. As a Christian minister, I'm going to be sad that another person's going to die, but I'm going to be feeling like justice was served if that person is executed. If they're white, if they're brown, black, whatever color, I don't care. I think justice should be blind.
Right. To that. I believe that. Mm-hmm.
Now, if other people will say, I don't believe in the death penalty, that's fine. I don't disrespect people who have different opinions. But from a theology standpoint, I do. But I don't care what color the person is. Therefore, it should be applied equally to whether they're white or black or yellow or brown or whatever color. I understand that it's often not the case in the statistics, but that's another topic for another discussion.
Well, I thought it was interesting how he talked about many. You heard last night that he really likes her. And how can you not? I mean, she was a very strong character in this book because, and not necessarily she's just a character because she's real, but at the same time, what she stood for. I mean, she definitely believed in marriage because she stood by him. I don't know. I don't know if I would have been strong enough to stand by him. I'm just going to be 100. But she did through it all. And it talked about, and I really felt for her when she needed to find an attorney. Now, Les, I know that a lot of you guys, and I'm going to get, I get side eyes with this because I talk about To Kill a Mockingbird. And I mean, it is what it is, but I'm just asking real questions and I'm still waiting for a real answer. In this story, she needed an attorney for her husband. Did she find that attorney in Monroeville?
No.
Why not?
And that's a sad testament to the attorneys that were there at the time, whom I know each one of them personally. Attorneys are, if I'm not one, but if my understanding is correct, they are not to prejudge. They're there to represent their client. And someone should have taken that case. I think there were fears, just if you go back to Kill a Mockingbird, and Atticus Finch was, I'm no expert on all this, but Atticus Finch was widely condemned, and his children, his scout was, put upon because he was defending this black man who was accused. Like, how could you do that?
So why do I celebrate To Kill a Mockingbird when they really don't do that? That's fake. You don't really do that because she didn't have an Atticus Finch. Why couldn't we, if you really want to celebrate something, give me something now, not something 30 years ago that was something made up that we're making millions off. Why can't we have let this been an Atticus Finch moment? But she had to go all the way to Selma to find a black attorney.
I think Harper Lee was trying to make the point that in 1930s Monroeville, this was like way out of, this is from Mars, that her dad, that Scout's dad would do this. Now she was, I think, if you know the backstory there, that this is Harper Lee's, Atticus Finch was based on A.C. Lee, her dad, who was an attorney, who would have done that. It's purported. That's what I read. And so she was trying to portray how this is the way it should be, not the way it is. That is the way it was. And apparently in 1986, that's the way it was, which is sad.
We have a question for you. Deetra says, do you think the current attorneys would take the case? It's a good question, right? I'll let you guys answer it since you guys are guests. And I love my guests. That's a good question. I don't think they would, but you guys go ahead.
Anthony?
Crickets.
Here we go. Here we go.
Les is so generous. I'm telling you.
All right, he's very generous.
Too much already.
I'm going to have to repay him for this generosity. Well, let me preface it with this, because I don't know any of them. I'm hard pressed to say that they would not. But let me also say that we're still dealing with oppression in that community. We're still, in my personal opinion, possibly some forms of racism there. So if this was a 1986 and 2021 all over again, I do think that there would be some inclination of prejudgment. Now, the fact that there could be some, potential folk to actually stand up, I think, we may have, again, some of the Atticus Finch backlash for actually stepping up for that, which, that type of pressure, depending upon, how you're grounded, in your faith, how you're actually built as a person, you may or may not, could actually handle that. So I still think I'm hard pressed to say yes, That's why I'm saying I still think that it could potentially be some of what we saw in 1986.
So he said all of that to say no. He
Well,
just said it in a very eloquent way. But I agree. No, I don't think they would. But I want to hear what you have to say, Les.
Are you talking about current attorneys? Would they take the case?
Yeah, right now, today.
Walker McMillan today, if it were today?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to hedge because I don't really know who all the attorneys are there. I think there might be probably a few newer attorneys who would. But as I think someone just commented, they would put their reputation and their practice on the line if they did.
Yeah.
But I think there are one or two. Again, I don't know who they all are, but I would hope that there's somebody there that would take it. I just don't know. I don't know who they are there anymore.
Well, it looks like our viewers, none of them think they would. And I'm going to back up what I say because Monroeville has not changed that much. And I know we don't want to admit that, but it's real. Because, and I don't know what it's going to take. I wish I knew the magic answer. I don't know what it's going to take for Monroeville to embrace each other's differences. I don't know what it's going to take, but they are not there yet. And that's why it's hard for me to embrace To Kill a Mockingbird because I think it's fake. I don't care that she was trying to bring an image out now. We are how many years from that? I want to deal with because you know what? Pete Earley's book was letting us know what time it is. Just Mercy let us know what time it is. We know racism exists. Why not give me something a little closer? But you made a very good point, Les, earlier. You said Monroeville does not want to mess up its image. Do you agree with that, Anthony?
Yes, and I don't think it wants to open up old wounds and embrace a cultural change that should be happening in 2021.
If To Kill a Mockingbird isn't an old wound, I don't know what the hell is. Sorry. That's an old wound. You're reminding me, you're forcing me to look at a story where a black man was convicted. I'm having to relive that every year. No, I'm sorry. I don't want to think about that. If it were different, if he were found not guilty, justice worked because he really didn't do it. But he wasn't found not guilty.
It's true, he wasn't. But I think that what's ironic about the whole To Kill a Mockingbird angle is that, I think it's still done, or it was for many years, an actual play on the square in the courtroom of To Kill a Mockingbird, some, aspect of the trial and all that, and locals play the parts and all that.
Right.
And what's ironic about them doing that, and I applaud that they do, and it's been played in different places in I think DC and New York and maybe London and other places around the world. What's ironic is that a case like this, where somebody was wrongly convicted, just as in Kill a Mockingbird, could say, look, it does work. What happened in To Kill a Mockingbird was the man who, I can't remember his character's name right off the top of my head, but he was vindicated. Robert Duvall was, I think, his first acting role was the character who was in the shadows all the time, and he took care of it himself. Justice was served by Boo Radley. Behind the door, you watch the movie, behind the door, there he is, Robert Duvall standing there. And he's the one who vindicated the whole thing and took care of the killer. So I think what's ironic to me is that bringing this case out and solving it and bringing it out to the forefront says, we've come around. We're not going to stand by a wrong conviction. Right. We're going to find the real killer. I mean, I think that's a great story. I don't know why it's not, why go through this motion all the time about To Kill a Mockingbird and then just hide this other thing like it never happened.
I think you're saying the same thing I'm saying.
Anyway, but I like To Kill a Mockingbird. I think the story was meant to point towards something better.
But we've evolved from that. We're not that. That is not who Monroeville really is. So I just think that we're capitalizing off of a lie. And this is not personal. This is about someone's real life here. She lost a child, and it's time to come up off that. Find another thing to be famous for, like doing the right thing.
No, maybe you misunderstood me.
Maybe.
Monroeville, so the To Kill a Mockingbird is what it was what it was in the 1930s.
Right.
The only thing is you had a hero. You had Atticus Finch, the hero. But
how was he a hero? That's the part I don't understand.
He put his reputation and everything on the line to defend the man. So he did defend him. He did his best job. And by the way, when it was all said and done and Boo Radley had taken care of the thing, no charges were filed. Look, I'll tell you something. I don't know how much time we have left.
We got all night.
How much
time do you have, Les? How much time do you have, Anthony? I can sit here all night.
I was living in Monroeville at the time,
right,
when out going toward Claiborne in Mexi, people say down there. We used to say, 6 or 8 miles down the road. I may not have the details of the story right, but I got the essence of it. A white man had walked away from, escaped from some kind of mental institution further west, maybe Grove Hill. And he was walking up the highway 84, and he came upon 2 little black children who were playing out. They lived there they were there with their grandparents. I think they lived there. A little dirt driveway to the house. And he came along them, and he had picked up what we called a bush axe, which is a long handle, and then it had a blade that was long and had a curve like that. It was sharp on both sides. These 2 little children, I think like 5, 6 years old, were playing right by the road, and he stopped,
killed them,
and butchered them.
Yeah.
You heard about it.
Yeah.
He kept going.
Yeah.
African-American grandpa came out
and ran him down.
Saw what happened. Not just ran him down and backed over him and ran over him and backed over him and ran over him multiple times till there was not much left of the white man.
Wow.
You know what happened to the black man who did that?
They let him slide.
Nothing. Now, in a truly, completely racial setting, he would have gone to jail for killing a white man. But he didn't, because the authorities at the time, and I don't remember what year this was, they knew, they understood the passion, the rage that this grandfather felt of losing his 2 grandchildren to the killer.
Yeah.
So there can be a better outcome. And I think what Atticus Finch was doing was he was the hero because he was willing to step up to the plate and defend this man when everybody else said, no, he's guilty. She said he did it. He's guilty. But he said, no, I'm going to defend the man. And he did. Now he lost the case. But you remember what the people up in the balcony said, the other African-American people in the balcony said when he was walking out of the courtroom by himself? And they all stood up. They recognized what had just happened. Scout was still sitting down. And they said, Miss Scout, stand up. Your father or your daddy is passing. Because he was walking out of the courtroom. They were up in the balcony because they couldn't sit down in the regular area. He was the hero. And I think what she was pointing to was, we can do better than this. This is not good. Now, in 1986, I don't think we had arrived yet, and we still hadn't totally arrived. But
2021, we're still not there.
We can get there. We can.
How are we going to get there? How we get there, Les? Well, you guys are ministers. Maybe you should go back to Monroeville and preach this sermon because you're very good and you have a very level voice that makes people want to listen. And I think that you could be the answer to bring that divide together. But I think that what has to happen, we have to start out by being honest about what it is. And that's the only way we're going to heal and make this right. People have to own up to what they've done. And if we keep glossing over it and making it seem like, well, this was worse than this and this, it is what it is. This is what happened in 1986. White people were very glad to see Johnny D go down because they just wanted somebody to pay for it. And he was their guy, no matter what. And they had a little help along the way from Benson and Hooks. But I like what Patricia Betts said earlier. She said, listen, I'm just going to go out here on a limb. Bill Hooks was also a victim because he had some mental issues and he took the bait. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I agree with that.
Yep.
I don't want to talk too much, but I'll say this, Ella, do what we've started doing, which is get the word out, because I think there are a lot of people who are, this was 35 years ago. There are a lot of people in their 20s and 30s and 40s who don't remember this case, except it's come to fore now through Just Mercy. And that can make a difference. Who don't view things. This is not our daddies and granddaddies Monroeville anymore. There's a lot of people there. I wish they would speak up more, who I think would agree that was a wrong conviction and he needs to be fully cleared. And the only way that's going to happen is to find the killer. And
Amen.
Both things can serve justice.
That's right.
What we've got to do is we've got to contact the Monroe Journal. We got to put pressure on the Monroe Journal. We got to put pressure on the police department, the sheriff's department, the district attorney, whoever that is, and the ABI or whatever it's called now. And pressure. And today I've reached out to the police chief. I've reached out to the Monroe Journal, and I've reached out to a national and international podcast to try to bring that pressure. And that can happen. This case can be solved.
I love it. And you know what? I want to publicly thank you for that, Les, because you didn't have to do that. And see, that's how it starts, guys. Everybody. What he did today was a step in the right direction. And I like it. I love it. Because I think that you're the right person to tackle Monroe Journal. Because sometimes when I call Monroeville and I say, hi, this is Ella Johnson. I need to speak with click. They hang up on me, Anthony.
Wow.
So Anthony, I mean, listen, I'm not too proud to step back and let somebody else do it. Whatever it takes. I am all about one thing, and it is finding the killer so that Johnny D can be completely exonerated. And Ronda Morrison's mother can be at peace. That is my agenda, and I don't care if I have to step back and let somebody else do it. I don't care as long as we get what we're trying to get. Right, Les?
I think a lot of the people that are watching and tune in and share this, that's what, excuse me, that's what we need. That's what needs to happen.
Right.
And you know, I'll go out on a limb and say, hey, I would be willing to step up and preach that sermon you mentioned.
So where we're gonna preach it? You know what? We should go back. We should go to Monroe County High School and get the gym and just bring people there and preach this sermon and bring everybody together.
Let's go.
It's gonna take that, because it starts with every single one of us saying, you know what? Let me check myself. And I'm talking to Ella too. Check yourself. Do you have prejudices, Ella? Yeah, because I don't like To Kill a Mockingbird. That's one of them. And I know that's like that's the unpardonable sin.
Now you just committed the unpardonable sin in Monroe.
Yeah, I know, right? But it's because it hasn't reached me why I need to. Because I deal in where we are right now. What Just Mercy did was bring out a truth. We don't talk about that. Circumstantial evidence brought out a truth, and they're a lot closer to the real times. And that's why I just don't like the hypocrisy. That's all.
And Ella, we've had this conversation before about, To Kill a Mockingbird. I'm not going to bash To Kill a Mockingbird or anything of that nature, but why at this point, can't Just Mercy kind of step up to the plate and take that position that pictorial To Kill a Mockingbird had and really bring it into a real sense of something that really actually happened within the 21st century, right?
That's what I'm talking about.
Really actually happened. Hey, we got a black man from X community. He was wrongly thrown on death row for no reason at all, per se, right? So why can't now we elevate Just Mercy from a Monroeville perspective versus To Kill a Mockingbird? And that's not
Very
taking
good question.
that's not taking anything away from Harper Lee, her Pulitzer the prize that she actually won.
Right.
Anything.
Kudos. I think that's awesome. Kudos to her.
Again,
Yeah.
It was perceived in the book, fiction based upon what was going on in the 30s in Monroeville, but we have factual in the 80s.
That's what I'm talking about.
On death row. And I think
I agree.
I'm going to say one more thing about To Kill a Mockingbird, and then we're going to go. I do not believe he was a hero. That's just what I feel. I don't believe that. And I'm going to say that. I just don't think that he deserves a pat on the back for representing a black man. I just don't. I think you have to give me something. Now, if he had represented a black man and he had changed the way people view that black man, then maybe. But I don't see hero in that. Sorry.
And I would say this last comment now.
Yeah.
To look at the compare and contrast To Kill a Mockingbird and Just Mercy, you have a Brian Mercy, right? Equivalent to an Atticus Finch. And then you have Johnny D. So if we look at what's a true hero from that context, we have Brian Stevenson.
There you go. Now that's a hero, Les.
Yeah,
I don't disagree. Why he was a hero? Because he didn't walk around cursing everybody out. That was giving him the hell he was getting.
Neither did Atticus Finch or Gregory Peck. Come on, but no, I agree. Brian Stevenson was a hero.
Les, now you trying to keep me here all night. I'm trying to get off the To Kill a Mockingbird, but you just want me to go there.
I love Gregory Peck in that movie, but no,
I like him too.
What I'm saying is, even what the comments have been so far about would an attorney today take that case? Would a white attorney in Monroeville take that case today? I'm not sure. But in 1986,
I don't know why you're not sure.
No, because of the implications of it. Even today, but in 1986, no way. In 1935, zero.
Right.
That's the reason I'm calling him a hero. He's from a literary standpoint, he's a hero in the book. That's all I'm saying, because he did something that went against everything else of the times. And in 1986,
right, I hear that.
In 1986, had a local white attorney, and that's all there were at the time, have taken the case for Walter Macmillan and many. He'd have been a hero in my eyes, because, are you kidding me? You'll never work here again.
Why not have integrity in the job? Let's start there. This is why I don't think they're heroes, because that is what you're supposed to do. You take an oath as an attorney to represent, I take an oath to represent only white people or people I like. No, that's just like saying I'm going to be a judge and I'm going to let all the white people off and I'm going to let all the black people go to prison. You don't get to decide, because that is not integrity. Journalism. I'm a journalist, and I understand when journalism, you're supposed to tell the truth. What did the Monroe Journal do? What did they do when they talked about this case? It was always one-sided. It was whatever Tom Tate wanted. So you don't get a pat on the back for doing what's right. That's why I don't think he's a hero. Brian Stevenson took an oath. You think he only defends black men? He defends white men too.
I'm going to push back a little bit, because a hero in a military setting is somebody who does the right thing in the face of an onslaught of the enemy. And we all recognize that. Somebody that runs into the bullets, somebody that runs up the tower in 2001 and 9/11. He's supposed to go up and rescue people in 9/11,
right?
The firefighters and the policemen, and they did. And a lot of them gave their lives for doing that heroic act. But that's what they're supposed to do. But we call them heroes because who among us would look up that tower or look in the face of the bullets and run into that? It takes a heroic person who's going to go against what the human nature is. And the human nature in 1986 and in 1930s Monroeville, and maybe even today, is I'm not going to. I know I should.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch it.
Take that case because I'm going to be, ostracized, and that's why I call it heroic.
My last commentary. I promise. My last commentary.
Okay.
In doing the compare and contrast. So I understand what you're actually saying, like in looking at the definition of a hero and putting it into a military setting or putting it into a setting where folk are actually rescued from harm's way. Essentially, what Bryan Stevenson actually did was he saw a need to help the oppressed, right? Help the oppressed man or woman in a case that was wrongly convicted and thrown on death row, that did not have a savior, for one, did not have the finances or the financial backing to hire a competent attorney that could even be in a position to get them some sort of justice or get them some sort of reprieve from a sentence perspective. So with the equal initiative opportunities, Bryan set out from a heroic perspective, dedicated his life to get folk off of death row. So I actually just watched something recently. Obviously we had Johnny D, who was wrongly convicted, but we also had a man in Birmingham, Alabama, and his name escapes me. I apologize. That was on death row for 30 years, who was actually innocent. And so I look at that as a heroic, that you're showing compassion for people who have not committed a crime, who have been wrongly incarcerated, and you want to help them not be in that position. So that's kind of where I'm kind of going with
and I agree with you, Anthony. I think what Bryan Stevenson has done, what he did in this case and other cases, is heroic, because he faced a lot of opposition in Monroeville as well, and he fought against. He went right into that opposition and persevered. So he's heroic as well. I don't mean to discount that. I'm just talking about To Kill a Mockingbird. But
right, yeah, and I'm done.
Bryan Stevenson was heroic, absolutely, and he did a great job. I'm thankful.
He did a stellar job, because you know what? Along the way, I noticed in the book, Chapman. Did you guys realize that Judge Key, when he found out that Bryan Stevenson was going to take Johnny D's case, there were rumblings in Monroe, oh, it's drug money, mafia money, all that nonsense. But he actually called Bryan Stevenson in and said, you know who this guy is? He was actually trying to get Bryan Stevenson not to represent Johnny D. Now, what is that all about? I mean, come on.
I knew Judge Key.
Really?
I did. And I don't
want to talk about your friend.
I was very sad to hear that he did that. A judge is not supposed to do that. That's not a judge. A judge is supposed to call balls and strikes, and that's not calling balls and strikes.
That's right. Yeah.
But again, a lot of that was based upon how the whole system was perceiving Johnny D as a person.
I agree.
A black man during that time. That's what
I agree.
It was actually predicated on. So now that I, from a judge perspective, have that information, and here's how I perceive this black man, I am now going to basically try and deter this young attorney coming in to help this man by basically giving him background information from my perspective to sway him into a way that, hey, maybe he would not take the case, right? But again, using the heroic standpoint, Bryan Stevenson persevered through that, because he did encounter racism. He did encounter altercations with the Monroeville law enforcement during this whole cycle. So just imagine if that was the three of us here being in Bryan Stevenson's shoes, doing what he actually did, and still persevered through to get Johnny D off, regardless of what he actually encountered.
I agree. He walked into the lion's den and he persevered.
Correct.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Now, let me ask you a question, Les. Do you see yourself being in front of a white congregation and telling them this story of it's time to heal? Because I can't reach them. I don't think so.
Well,
I
yeah.
might reach one or two, but I think you have more influence in in that community than
Well,
I do.
Yeah, I have my congregation is.
I'm talking about in Monroeville.
Oh, in Monroe, yeah, I would speak anywhere. Call me. Churches.
It may take that. It may take that.
I speak anywhere because, yeah, justice is justice, and it's supposed to be blind.
That's right.
And you know, the way that we move forward in our lives, in our country, in where we are today in 2021, we're about as divided as we've been in a long time. But we have to face the facts, and we have to face the situation. We have to face our own involvement in that. And yeah, so I have a congregation here that's primarily white. I live I think I may have mentioned to you this morning when we talked, Ella, that the area I live is about 97% white.
Yeah.
In my church, we have probably about the same percentage of African Americans in our church as is reflected in our census. So about that. A couple of our elders are African American that I serve with. But I think that's how things have changed. We have a place down in Clayton, Alabama that we go where my wife is from. And if you know anything about Clayton, that's the hometown of George Wallace, where he used to kick off all of his campaigns. In fact, we got a wedding gift when we got married from George Wallace. So that's the town, right? But the little Baptist church where we were married back in 1979, I'm pretty sure I'm the first person to ever have a wedding there and brought in an African-American man to sit with our family because he was kind of part of my family.
Right.
And he came and sat right down front with my family when we got married. And now that was 1979. By 1990s, they had an African-American like a youth minister kind of guy, and then later a guy who was in an interracial marriage. This is George Wallace's Clayton, Alabama. We could have a whole segment about George Wallace and all that and the racial things in the 60s and 70s. That's changed in Clayton, and I think it's changed in Monroeville to some extent, not where we want it to be. But I could speak to anywhere in Monroeville that would have me speak if they want to hear the raw truth.
I think that's what it's going to take, guys. What did we learn from last night with Pete Earley? One, we're very excited that he is part of this petition and he's signing and he's writing letters to push this along. So that was good to hear. Remember when he said that last night, that he's going to write letters to the Attorney General and show his support to this and why it needs to be done. I think that's a big step for us. And I'm glad that we're all working on this because we prove doing this that we can work together for the same goal. And that goal amongst all of us is to find the killer, the person, man or woman, who killed Ronda Morrison. We have to find them.
Yes.
And, you guys are out there and you know something, I don't really care if this person's your buddy. I don't care if it's your cousin. I don't care if it's your daddy. We need to find him or her, and we need to bring them to justice. Now, I can't even pretend, Anthony, unless to know who it is. I mean, all I can go off is the same thing everybody else is looking at. What's in the book? What we do know in the book is that ABI had who they thought was a good candidate for a good suspect, that they felt like, yeah, this is it. But we can't forget, because I like to bring it back to 100. Why didn't it stick? Let's talk about that. We almost had the killer. Everybody's like, "Oh, we need to get the killer." Well, we almost had the killer.
I think Pete Earley said last night that there were two things: prominent family. Now, I would, I think I know the person they're talking about. And it depends on what you mean by prominent. Okay. But
Why
Why
should I
do you-
care about that? Why should I care that it's a prominent family?
You shouldn't, but nobody should. It's, Bernie Madoff just died in prison. Bernie Madoff was pretty prominent. He
Right.
swindled 60 billion out of people and hurt a lot of people. So prominence doesn't mean anything to me.
It does to racists, though.
I kind of detest it, actually, that whole idea of privilege and prominence and all that stuff. But there was one thing that was prominent family, and the second thing was an attorney who was aggressively, according to Pete Earley last night, sort of daring people to come after his client and say, "Don't do it," basically, and
that scared them off.
People backed off. I don't know.
Talk to me, Anthony. Why? Why? Because this is disturbing. We were close to solving this murder. But because Chapman decided, or which one? Was it Chapman or Tate that made that decision? Chapman, I think, decided.
No, Chapman was not.
Robles had enough. Was it Chapman or Tate? Who decided it?
Chapman was not. He was not DA during that period.
Okay, who was?
During the trial and all that. That was Ted Pearson.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about at the end when ABI reopened the case.
Oh.
After Johnny D, during the 60 Minutes thing, when Monroeville was very embarrassed by the 60 Minutes. That's why they were upset. And they sent ABI. And now Chapman made a big deal. I have to give credit where credit is due. He was the one that made the call to bring ABI back. Right? So I want to give credit where credit is due. And that's probably the only good thing he did. And God knows he tried to get credit for it over and over, but he did do that. So ABI comes back in and they reopen the case and they, without a doubt, figure out, number one, this was not a robbery. It was a sex crime. And number two, Johnny D didn't do it. But in the process of them reopening this investigation, guys, they also discovered this new Howard Denmar guy. And they were hot on his trails.
He had been known.
Right. Apparently, he's the same guy everybody's talking about now, 35 years later. So we were so close. And Chapman or Tate, whoever it was, decided, nah, Monroeville's had enough.
And I think that's the key point, right? A lot of it actually had to do with, hey, enough. We've had the 60 Minutes airing. They came in and basically exposed our county, basically exposed the mishap of the work that was actually done by the Monroe County Sheriff's Department, and really actually had to do with image. So if you kind of put all of that together, that's why I was like, hey, let's.
But why weren't they worried about image when they sent a man to death row without a trial? They weren't worried about image then.
Who cared? Hey, Ella, who cared? Yeah. It was just Johnny D. Who cared? And Anthony, I'll take issue to one thing you said. You said the mishap. No, it wasn't a mishap. It was a blind cover up. They withheld. I don't know who exactly, but evidence withheld. So mishap's a nice way to say it, but it was more than
That's
that.
That's essentially what I was actually doing, right? I was trying to.
You're trying to be nice.
Tell it like it is.
Right.
No, I want us to talk about this. Why? If Monroe was so concerned, why did they drop the ball?
The charging decision would have been the DA's decision.
Okay.
So I don't. Now pressure from the sheriff and all that. I don't know how that worked, but could have been. But whether or not to pursue charges against Denmar or anybody else would have been the DA's call.
And let's say the point is, we've been kind of talking about the sheriff's department, but that's only one sector of the public government, right? So this whole ordeal, right, would have opened up again the public government all the way up to the highest office, to the mayor's office, on how they actually conduct business in Monroe County. So this really put a dim light in how they were actually running the show.
I agree. And it would not have been a good light. And I think generally speaking, apparently people just didn't want to do it. And by that time, the original charging DA was not there. So Chapman, for good or ill, was the one who would have made that call. Now, I don't know. I asked this question to Pete Earley last night, I commented, and said, because I don't know what, if any, forensic evidence was gathered properly and has been kept or not. I don't know all that. So the title of his book is interesting because circumstantial evidence. What have you got? What has a current DA got to go charge anybody? Maybe they have maybe it's the same suspect that ABI had back then in the early 90s. But a DA has got to decide, current DA or anybody else, what do we have? What do we have to go forth on this? Do we have evidence? One of the things I want to say, and I got to get off here shortly, but there's another podcast called Somebody Knows Something, I think's the name of it.
Yeah, that's nice. It's catchy.
And it's like it goes through like 8 or 10 or 12 episodes of a case where something didn't get solved, the crime did not get solved. And the whole premise is they keep putting this information out there. They go through the case, they go through what's known about the case and blah, blah, blah. Somebody knows something. And somebody in Monroeville knows something.
Preach.
And they need to speak up because, listen, if you're listening or you see this later and you know something that could solve this case and you take that to your grave, I don't think I'd want to be doing that. I don't think I'd want to be doing that. Bring it out. Throw caution to the wind and say something to somebody in authority, more than one person. Say it to press, journalists. Say it to somebody. Well, I'm sorry. If you know something that could implicate somebody, go to authorities, but don't let up. Make them do something with it.
I like that, Les. I like that title. Somebody Knows Something. That is awesome. I think we'll have that title of a show. We'll steal it. I like that because you know what, you make a good point, and I like the passion that you said that in, because I know that you mean it. And I'm glad to have you part of our team and help bring this to fruition, because I think that you are well respected in Monroeville, and I think they'll listen to you. And whatever it takes is what I'm about. Whatever it takes for us to reach people and reach enough people so that we can get this case reopened, then Monroeville can be known for that.
Wouldn't that be great?
Doing the right thing. When did that become such a taboo thing? Doing the right thing, not because you think you're such a good person, but because it's just the thing to do. When you know you're a hero is when you'll do it for Les and you'll do it for Anthony. You'll do it for both of them, no matter what it is. And we need enough people to stand up and do that now.
We have to persevere.
Yeah.
We have to persevere.
Change the narrative, right? It's time to change the narrative.
Change the narrative. I like that.
This is one way that we can begin to change the narrative.
We can, and it can be done. Let me mention one other thing. I've talked about podcasts, and I listen to a lot of them. There's one, look it up on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. It's called In the Dark. Write it down, In the Dark. And listen to the case of Curtis Flowers from Mississippi. There's I think it's like 20 episodes, or maybe not quite that many because there's a few. This guy was convicted and went to prison for murdering some people in a furniture store in a small town in Mississippi. And his case went, it's so bizarre you can't imagine. He finally, I think, just got out after 20-something years in prison, but he stayed in prison all these years while his, Denise Tate said that, Curtis Flowers, Mississippi. So this guy went through appeal after appeal, had convictions overturned. The prosecutor kept going back after him. He stayed in prison the whole time. The entire time, even when he was his case was overturned. They kept him in prison, like 6 or 7 trials.
Wow.
There was prosecutor misconduct. There was an all-white jury and all these things. Right. And clearly, if you listen to it and you go through it and the courts finally agreed, he didn't do it. But it was perseverance and a lot of prayer. And it can be done. Now, Johnny D got out and he was exonerated, I think, clearly, but some people still
But was he free, though, Les? Do you think he was free?
No, I don't think he was free. I mean,
I think the system killed him, and the system has to exonerate him. And the only way the system is going to do that is to change the system. And that's going to take our hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. We can't just do podcasts. It can't end here. We have to march the streets. If we got to go to Monroeville and stand at the courthouse steps and say this, then that's what it's got to be. Because if you guys are worried about your image, shut me up. Because we're not going to stop. I'm going to speak for Ella. I'm not going to stop talking until it changes.
Send an email to publisher@monroejournal.com. Publisher@monroejournal.com.
You know I got all the emails over there at the Monroe Journal.
We're
all buddies over there.
And then contact the police department, the sheriff's department, the DA. I'm not sure who that is yet. I hadn't gotten to him yet, or her, whoever it is. The mayor, and then up the chain to the ABI. It's just pressure, and that's what Pete Earley was talking about last night.
And that's exactly what we have to do. Yeah, and Anthony.
I went in with this, and Ella, you and I have actually talked about this in a sidebar conversation. One of the ways that this can actually really get out is that we need the ministers in that community to step up. We need in that community to.
Why you tell me why you think they won't, Anthony? Because they watch the broadcast, they know this exists. Why haven't they stepped up yet? 100.
That's enough show.
Yeah, that is enough show.
That's another show.
And that's what I'm talking about. We have to be real. We got to put everything on the table.
And no discredit to any minister, no disrespect. My point is that your community, your church community that you lead, actually, respects you, right? Your authority figure as a man of God exudes within your church community. So bringing this type of petition and getting people started there within the church community on board will really help to magnify and intensify this and get it to where it actually needs to be.
Okay, well, you guys are both ministers. I'm not. You guys are both ministers, so make a phone call. Les, what minister in Monroeville are you going to team up and buddy with? Anthony, what minister in Monroeville are you going to buddy up with? Let's get it going. I'm not a minister. You guys are in that field, so they'll listen to you. You think you can make that happen, guys?
I don't know many there. I know one.
Well, you know,
we can start there.
You know my first phone call.
Who's your first phone call? Never mind. Who's your first phone call? I mean, since we're talking.
Reverend Cunningham.
Good. I love it. That's a good start because he has the biggest church in Monroeville with the biggest congregation in a community that really needs to be a part of this. Very good start. Very good start, guys. Well, I think we've had a great show. I don't want to keep you too long, Les. I don't want to make you mad with all those guns behind you. I can't. You're messing up my concentration. Like I've been watching those guns all night. I'm telling you.
Just don't come in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I wouldn't do
that. Otherwise, they're just for fun.
Yeah, I heard that. That's good. Well, you guys want to say something before we get out of here? I always love talking to you guys. I love that we can agree to disagree on certain things, and then we can still be like, you know what, because you and I, all of us, one thing we all love is we love our hometown. All of us do. And we all want the same thing. We want to see Ronda's killer brought to justice. That is the goal on all of our minds and our hearts. And because of that, that's why we're going to be successful in this.
Well, I'll end with this and let Anthony have the last word. My last word is this. Anybody who sees this or hears about it, if you know something, say something to the authorities, to the law enforcement people. Go to them. Oh, somebody's giving us some information right there. You'll send
Listen,
me.
I love Tammy. She is all over
Yeah,
this thing.
thank you,
I
Tammy.
love her. I love you, girl. Thank you.
If you know something, say something, and let's keep our foot on the accelerator.
Ooh, that was so deep. I like it. Say it again.
You know, we got to do it. Got to push.
Gotta push. I love it. I love it. Anthony.
I would say, as I mentioned before, the goal of the petition that we as people of society needs to be more empathetic to another person, right? We should be showing God's love to everyone on a daily basis. And one way that we can show God's love to Ronda's mother is to sign the petition so that we can bring her killer to justice, so that Ronda can have some sense of closure, can have some sense of healing for the time that she has left on earth. You know, I can only imagine when she wakes up every day and what she actually thinks, you know, when she looks around her home. I can only imagine that, you know, the things that are still there that remind her of her daughter, and the fact that I don't have any justice for my daughter. Well, yeah, the Monroe County government officials said Johnny D did it. Well, we found out that, you know, he didn't do it through a lot of trials and tribulations to get to that point. But who really did it, right? Who really murdered my innocent daughter? So I think that is the crux of the petition. So if we could have everyone just to put yourself in her shoes. If you're a mother, if you are a father, and someone took the life of your child, we're seeing that all across America here recently with the killings of innocent Black men at the hand of police. Right, they are someone's child, and those police officers will be brought to justice, or should be brought to justice. Let me actually put it in that manner. So in this context here, in order for this community, and maybe not everyone in Monroeville cares, you know, maybe that's your prerogative, but if you have any inclination, if you have any empathy about you, put yourself in this woman's shoes and let's get the word out. Let's sign the petition. This is going to be the only way that this is going to actually happen. And I challenge the faith-based community within Monroeville to step up and let's bring this forth in your congregation, right? You know, we talk about what it's actually going to take with having Jesus Christ as your Lord, right? And accepting Christ. Well, we need to put that into action, right? And let's show some empathy for this woman who's still grieving.
Well, I'm going to do this. I don't want to assume that Bertha Morrison is not watching this broadcast or won't see this broadcast. So I'm going to take my last words and I'm going to look into my camera and I'm going to speak to her. This is something that God has put on my heart while we're talking. I saw your article, and I'm going to talk as if I'm talking to her. So y'all don't think I'm crazy right now. This is what God told me to do. I saw your article that you wrote December 20th in 2020. I saw it. I read every word of it. And the entire time that I read that, Mrs. Morrison, I put myself in your shoes. And when the days are rough and the criticism comes to me about doing this, I don't think about it. I think about you. Because I have to be the voice that you don't have right now. I felt your pain when you talked about how everyone has forgotten. Everybody goes about their lives from day to day, doing what they need to do. The police aren't talking to you. No one's talking to you. And then when you call ABI or SBI, they tell you that the information, all that evidence is stuck in a box somewhere. I know that hurt. But I want you to know that there are people who really do care. There are people who have been through things and they know what it's like to be forgotten. And you're looking at her. So, in essence, we are the same. And I want you to also join our petition. I want you to find it in your heart to forgive everybody that has done anything or said anything that you may not have understood. And it's time for all of us to heal. Let's hold hands, let's work together, and let's heal together, because God expects us to love together. That ends our broadcast for tonight, guys. I want to thank all of you for tuning in to the Ella Johnson Show. This has been a very emotional week, guys, but we are all in this together. And I want you guys to check your heartstrings when you get off this broadcast. Click on the link and sign the petition. If you want to be a part of this broadcast, if you want to be a part of anything we're doing, please hit me up. But that ends our show for tonight. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Ella Johnson Show. Everybody have a good night.
God bless.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ella Johnson Show.